Hello, everybody, and welcome to Sparring Partners. It's a pleasure to be here again and to talk about energy efficiency and sustainability, because this is a topic that I started to work relatively recently. I always resisted to do that because I thought it was kind of boring. You measure how much you can consume. Yeah, obviously you want to minimize it, but so what? And I found it to be the most intellectually challenging one and really engaging and engrossing, because when you start to understand how you obviously you want to minimize the energy consumption for all sorts of reasons, but how do you do it? What is the best way to do it? How do you measure it? What are the trade-offs? And so everything becomes very soon very interesting. And so just reducing consumption, that's not really, well, that's what it is, that's the end goal, but in order to get there, there's so many ways to go there and so many things to consider. So I am really pleased to have this conversation with Emanuel Kolta, who is a lead analyst at the GSMA Intelligence. And he's a great guy to talk about pretty much anything, but today we'll focus on energy efficiency because he has been working on it, and he will give us sort of the latest on what's happening. So, Emanuel, tell us first who you are, how you got in there, and what you do in your daily work.
Thanks a lot,
Other than
Monica.
chatting with me at some analyst event throughout the world.
Thanks a lot, Monica. Yeah, I just wanted to say that how did I get here is I think because we had a few analyst events where we sat next to each other and we started to talk, and you kindly invited me, and thanks for that once again. So I'm a lead analyst at GSMA, which is the analyst and consulting arm from GSMA. I'm here for 6 years. Before that, I used to work in the industry, another analyst house, and also in the industry with two different vendors doing strategy. And I started to the past probably 10 years, I'm working around network innovation. Um, and in the past few years with a very strong focus on on energy efficiency and sustainability, and especially how can you actually measure energy efficiency and sustainability, and what are the latest solutions, how operator can actually improve the energy efficiency and improve their sustainability metrics.
So what made you what made you get interested in it, other than the fact that, I guess, like for me, like everybody's talking about it, so it's like we need to work on it. But what kept you there? What do you think is interesting about the topic?
I think a few months before COVID, we had a project on network economics, and I could see that energy is usually in the top three of the biggest operational costs for network operators, next to labor and site rentals. And I was expecting that energy is probably the one which is not expected to decrease. So thanks for virtualization, tower costs, and newest trends, operators can obviously push down labor cost and site rental costs, but energy is a bit different.
Yeah.
And I think it's a very grateful topic because it's a win-win for the operators, for the vendors, for the environment, for basically everyone. And I think it's also a very exciting topic.
Yeah, you know what? Before I started working on it, whenever I do a business model, you just have OPEX, CAPEX, and whatever. So in the OPEX, you always have energy. Just put it like 20%. And the assumption is that it's kind of like site rental costs. There's just not much you can do. That's what it is. The cost of the energy is pretty much the same. It might change a little bit, but constant, which we know now that it's not, that it fluctuates depending on whatever. And actually, you can improve it. I mean, because, like I guess that you can say the same with automation. You might be able to reduce staff costs, but like site rentals, I mean, I don't see that really changing in a major. Well, you can say, well, if equipment gets much smaller, but realistically, it's not going to be 1/10 the size. So, I think there is more scope for improvement in the power consumption, right?
Yeah, I agree on this one. You can obviously squeeze cost with network simplification, with multiband radios. You can decrease obviously the wind load with the cylinder shaped new antennas. Some of the
Mhm.
um, some of the place where operators renting sites are based on a number of equipments. Some of them is using wind load as a metric to charge network operators. So they can obviously improve, but I agree there is more area to develop in the energy. And also we expect that data traffic is expected to increase like 35-40%. I expect like in the future. And how does it impact the energy consumption? Is it a variable cost? Is it something which is directly related, or is energy a fixed element which is related to network layers or the used frequency? I think it's also an important question.
Yes, and so clearly traffic is going up. It might be debatable how much, but it's not going down and it's going up. And so, but also networks are becoming more efficient. So the question is, what is the trade-off? But so initially, you mentioned measurement, and maybe we can get started there because so the first issue is like to understand what's really what's going on, how much we consume. So an operator would know how much they spend on electricity or well power, but at the same time they don't really know how efficient they are. That's a different issue of how do you measure efficiency, and there is a question of measuring internally for your own your own benefit. You want to know how efficient you are or you can be, but also to compare operators in different countries, or to compare rural versus urban. So how should we think about measuring consumption and efficiency?
When you walk in any kind of event or MWC Barcelona and see this kind of huge numbers that 20, 30, 40, 50% more
Yes,
energy efficient, I'm usually very skeptical with those ones
same
because
here. Yeah,
what do we mean by 20% more energy efficient?
yeah,
Is it is it is it because energy efficiency in many places where we measure it is usually pretty simple. If you're talking about a light bulb or a fridge
yes.
or a car, you know the input and you know the output, and this is how you usually measure energy efficiency. Measure the amount of kilowatt hours or liter of diesel or petrol you used, and the output is the hour of light or 100 miles or 100 kilometers. Using these metrics for a while now, but in telecoms, I think it's a way more complex because first the output of the industry is constantly changing, from the 2G period, from voice call hours and SMSs to slow data and broadband, and now we have this kind of magic use cases and a very diverse set of output if you think about what 5G can do. So the output is changing constantly. So we don't know how to measure them. How can you compare them? And also energy efficiency of what? Are we measuring one antenna or one radio unit or the whole base station or the whole site, including the passive infrastructure, with the rectifier, with the diesel generator, with the batteries, or with the whole network, the whole RAN, all the efficiency of the whole network operator, including uh, site visits and network testing. So I think it's how big is the scope, what we would like to measure. So I think it would be a bit more accurate if we say that energy efficiency of what exactly, because
Mhm.
it's very different if you measure the energy efficiency of the whole network operator um, compared if you just one network element.
And also the energy efficiency I mean, you can have the same infrastructure with a different user base, and then the efficiency depends on how much you use the network. So if you have a network that
Exactly.
is light, like you have a 5G network on day one where you have few subscribers, highly inefficient because obviously you don't have that much traffic going through it, but eventually you will. So, there's all sorts of things. So how should we do it? Well, we still need to measure it. So I completely agree with you that those numbers are complete. Well, I wouldn't say nonsense, but it's never clear what they mean. So, but we do need to measure.
I completely agree, and this is what, it's probably not time for self-promotion here, but this is what we tried to do in the past 5 years. So measuring energy efficiency, benchmarking energy efficiency, try to come up with a metric to measure energy efficiency, try to come up with a set of metrics. Um, it's super easy for car manufacturers. So basically, you use the same metrics since Henry Ford. How
Mhm.
many liter of petrol you're using for 100 miles, and you can measure a car from today with a car from 40, 50 years ago, or even 100 years ago. It's very different for networks. So we try to come up with a set of metrics how we measure it, and of course you can measure it from different perspective. You can measure it from a data traffic per used amount of energy. You can measure it number of served connection per used energy.
Mhm. Mhm.
You can use energy use per site. I think it's also a great metric. You can have some level of energy intensity metric. So how much energy did you use to generate 1 million USD or euro revenue?
Mhm.
Similar to other industries, you have this kind of energy intensity, how energy intense separate industries. So I think you can use different metrics, and all of them is good for to measure one angle, but also all of them has some kind of limitations. So if you're
Mhm.
talking about energy use per site, obviously it's very hard to measure an operator where using a bit more, small cells or different kind of network architecture with relying more on macro sites, or it's very different if you measure and use a metric compared to how much energy do you need to serve one connection, because obviously data traffic can be 10, 20, 50x difference between different countries. Um, or data traffic is also an angle, like, which is probably the most commonly used metric. So how much energy do we use to transfer one unit of data? But it also has a list of limitations. What kind of data are we talking about? Is it's very different to serve a drone and transfer data with a drone in with the Ultra HD camera on it, than transfer 1 GB data for a smart parking meter with a very different network requirement, that if SLAs. So I think they're all have their limitations. So probably right now what we believe is, if you use a mix of metrics, so you measure different angles of energy efficiency, but we haven't find, and I haven't find like one silver bullet to measure energy efficiency for networks. I don't have it. If you have it, please let me
Oh.
know immediately and message me, Emanuel Kolta, on LinkedIn. I'm very, very curious.
Well, when you think about it, if you want to if you look at network performance, I mean, throughput is not the whole story in the same way. And so we are used to use different KPIs. And it's not just one is important, the other ones are not, one is right, one is wrong. It's just you need to have a bunch of them to get an overall view on performance. And I think that, we should kind of think about efficiency kind of the same way, that you have different measures that are, that we can agree on, but each one will tell you something different. So latency is going to tell you a very different thing than throughput or reliability, or whatever it is. They're all important. So, and I guess that what you can minimize is different. And also, you mentioned a lot of dimension, but another one is how you can be more efficient. Like for instance, with the sleeping modes, so you can actually switch off the equipment or reduce consumption, and that's that's yet another dimension that you can be more or less aggressive. And so different vendors have different solutions. So it's all sorts of things that are that can be changing. So let's talk from an operator point of view, and maybe we can talk about on the vendor side. What do you think, what you hear from operators, what is that for them seems to be, I mean, do you have a sense of what is important for them in terms of what is that they are looking at? I mean, all these measures to characterize consumption
Uh,
or efficiency, I would say.
Yes, I think every network operator is different from energy management point of view. I think we can all agree that everyone wants to improve their energy efficiency. 5G was designed to be energy efficient. So when 5G is probably the first G where energy efficiency was an important factor. So I think it also helps the industry, but there is also a need to, you mentioned sleep modes, which is probably the low-hanging fruit with the use of machine learning, when an operator can actually, instead of a preset way I'm there is a huge amount of seasonality in this industry. So obviously a network engineer can set to sleep some of their equipments to go to sleep between 1 a.m. and 5 a.m. and make sure when people start to wake up and commute, things gonna turn up. But now these kind of new sleep modes can actually help to forecast data traffic, use inputs from weather forecast or events nearby, and improve the energy efficiency of the network by aligning to the forecasted the traffic needs. So I think it's one angle which is very helpful. And sleep modes and shutdown is something which is probably one of the first applications of AI for networks for network efficiency. 2017, 2018, vendors started to, and also network operators started to develop their own solution. But we can also see two different dimension now, because sleep modes are obviously the time dimension, but we also started to see new solutions around the spatial domain and also around the frequency domain. So in the spatial domain, I mean, you can actually horizontally and vertically turn the antenna where you expect the data traffic is. And this can actually improve your energy efficiency significantly. And one of the examples is that you can actually see when some of the latest antennas have this kind of optimization, so they can actually rotate the antenna tilt to the direction where the traffic is. So during the lunch break, the antenna actually face to the canteen or the close by restaurant, and then change back during the afternoon. Or the frequency domain, when actually you use carrier boosting to turn on some of those layers which have the optimal setup for your network, and you can maybe turn off some of the layers when you don't need it, when it's just a coverage focus time period. And so I think there is this kind of two dimension, which is a bit more harder, a bit more complex, but I think they also can save a lot of energy for network operators.
And this is actually, I'm glad you brought it up, because this is an interesting kind of dimension here, because the equipment that does it, which is massive MIMO, is also the one that uses most energy. So there is one argument, and this is devil's advocate here, that says, well, you are deploying these sites which are actually using more energy, so the energy costs go up. But on the other hand, because they're more efficient, I would argue that a lot of, I mean, yes, the net, the energy consumption goes up, but the efficiency also goes up. And it's the efficiency that actually matters rather than
Yeah.
absolute number, assuming you have the right traffic load and so on. And that's kind of the argument that some people have said, yeah, well, 5G is designed to be more efficient, but it actually uses more power than 4G. And it's like, yeah, but you have more capacity. So obviously you don't get it for there's no free lunch here. I mean, it might be more efficient, but you have to go somewhere. So how should we think about that?
Exactly, and just one thing to add, it's not just massive MIMOs, but now we can see passive antennas, which physically able to rotate into the direction. So it's not just massive antennas. I think this is probably the last missing part of network digitalization, when you can actually digitalize the antenna as well. And I think it's also very wonderful. And yes, so you can, when you turn on the 5G, you can expect some level of, many operators expect some level of energy increase, because obviously you have just a few 5G users in the area of that cell site. So probably turning on that new layer takes a lot of energy, and providing coverage for just a very few UE and very few amount of data traffic. But as you increase the 5G penetration, and more of your users are migrating into 5G device and 5G capable device, this is when you can see 5G's real efficiency. So in the beginning, you might experience in short term some level of increase in energy use, but obviously transferring data and serving connections with 5G is by nature more energy efficient. So 5G is theoretically more energy efficient, despite in the beginning there is this kind of even increase in energy use.
Yeah. Okay. So now let's quickly move a little bit from the vendor point of view, because every vendor would say we are cutting energy consumption, we're getting more efficient, and it's true. On the other hand, when I talk to them privately, all of them, with no exception, would say, yeah, we think we're doing well. However, they do not know exactly how their solution compares to others, other than on the specs, because then on the ground, when you have a commercial deployment, it's very hard. And so this is not, because this is kind of inherently hard, basically impossible, because you know how much the equipment uses at max, but you don't know exactly what is in in a real deployment, because it's never going to be. So are you, I mean, my understanding is that you're looking more at the network measurements, but what should vendors do, or is there a way to do it, or just like, that's, we can't possibly really deal with that in terms of trying to get, like, for if you get new windows or new a new fridge, you get the rating, the energy rating. We don't have the equivalent of that for telecom equipment. Should we have that? Is it possible to have it? I don't know whether it makes sense, really.
I think it's a really important point, because there is kind of diversity you mentioned within networks, and also this kind of different performance in a lab environment than in a real life environment. I think it would be hard. Like, we have a project on Green Network Index, which tried to give like a number between 1 and 100 for networks, how green they are. But it's not just energy efficiency. This includes all sorts of sustainability related metrics as well, and that's basically a weighted average of those elements. But every time when you build a model, as you mentioned, the model is not the reality. It's obviously it's a model, so it's a limit. There is obviously a lot of limitations. This is why it's a model. So I think you obviously lose a lot of data, but these kind of metrics are obviously very useful to to measure, or at least motivate network operators and vendors to improve the energy efficiency or to measure it. Because if you don't measure it, you cannot control it. So
Yeah.
obviously, even if there is some level of limitations, I think it's good to start measuring and tracking these kind of metrics.
Yeah. Okay. So we talked so far about measuring, which, for us within the industry, it really is all that. I mean, we really need to measure. But then from a regulatory point of view, from overall economy point of view, we also need to report it. And then if you are too, you can just say, oh yeah, but you need to measure efficiency using this 10 different KPIs that just confuse everybody outside because they don't, So how do we manage it when, an operator has to go to the financial community and say, this is our progress towards meeting the goals? I mean, how do we deal with that? Because that's also fraught with, when operators say we are at that point, oftentimes I'm just like, yeah, but what do you really mean? Are you really capturing what really matters?
Yes, and I think it's uh, the comparison with, let's say, fridges of light bulbs or cars. I think it's very different for networks because networks are really operate in a very different environment. So we started like an energy efficiency benchmarking 5 years ago, and obviously directly comparing a network from the Netherlands or Italy with somewhere from Argentina or Brazil, it would be extremely hard because how do you factor in things such as climate or data traffic usage per month per connection, or if you have a lot of islands, you have to basically
Yeah.
backhaul those islands completely differently. You have to maybe use a microwave link. You can't use fiber. You can't, because it would be extremely expensive and very hard to use it to connect sites in hard to reach areas or in a mountain area. So I think it's all things when you need to factor in when you want to do a cross-sectional analysis between different networks. We try to normalize data with climate and social factors and geographical factors, but it won't be perfect. It never be perfect because there are so many factor-ins. But the question is, do we really want to directly compare network energy efficiency between, let's say, Canada and the Netherlands? Um,
It's just,
well, it would be just so complex and
well, it
it would
also
be
be
very hard.
unfair to the Canadians, so to say. I mean, in this case, because obviously, well, I would imagine that the energy consumption, the energy efficiency is going to be much lower in Canada than in the Netherlands because they're so spread out. But they obviously want to serve all the rural population. I mean, and so I think we need to kind of be, yes, we want to increase efficiency, but not at the cost of service availability. And so we need to be, a little bit careful of not being too restrictive to the point where you affect service availability or things like that, or penalize, or simply penalize an operator that has to operate in that environment.
Exactly, but here's like climate. I was in a event in the Middle East, and you could see that I think it was in early November or late October, and there were like over 35 degrees, and air conditioning is running all the time. So, despite being maybe a more dense country compared to someone which is like a low density quarter country, one of them would obviously start arguing that yes, we need to use aircon every year.
Everywhere.
You don't have to, and in general, passive infrastructure and air conditioning and um, is somewhere between 30 and 50% on average. Energy is going for just on passive infra and not on directly to telco equipment. So obviously, if you have to do HVAC in that intense way and air conditioning, that significantly impact your energy efficiency and, as you mentioned, penalize. While in other places, as you mentioned, low density, there you have maybe coverage requirement as a network operator. It's a completely different um,
Yeah.
area. So I think this is what makes it extremely interesting from a methodology and analyst point of view.
Yeah, and I think that, yeah, because you want to see, when you get to the reporting stage, it's like, okay, how we're doing compared to other sectors, but also what services we provide, and again, what are the trade-offs. Now, another direction is the use of Wi-Fi versus cellular. Wi-Fi, I think, we might disagree. I mean, there's different estimates, but generally speaking, if you have wireline and Wi-Fi is more energy efficient than using cellular. Obviously, that's, you use whatever it's available, but should it be part of the energy efficiency trend to try to encourage um, you know more indoor, I mean, in fact, it doesn't have to be Wi-Fi, it's like indoor coverage, indoor infrastructure, which could be using Wi-Fi or small cells, because that's more efficient.
Uh, exactly. So I think that's also one other angle, which is the comparison of different technologies. We currently focused on mobile networks.
Mhm.
So that wasn't in the scope, but I think this is something also would be very interesting to see, or see other hot topics these days, like satellite or every kind of NTN
Yes.
solution. How does it compare to traditional legacy cellular technologies? So I think Wi-Fi, cellular technology, using fiber, how is how is it different to download a movie where if I'm on 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 my cellular network compared to Wi-Fi, compared to I think it's all something we can actually um, monitor, and it will be monitored in the future as well, even more important.
Yeah,
But we currently focused on either on mobile network operators or fixed network operators.
absolutely. Now, until now, we kind of focus on kind of the negative, the challenges of measuring and increasing efficiency, even though clearly we want to get to a point where networks are more efficient, because it's kind of a win-win situation. I don't know anybody that would possibly disagree with that, because it's good for the environment, it's good for the cost. I mean, there's no downside to it. But clearly it's hard to measure, it's hard to monitor, it's hard to decide how to really go about it. But on the bright side, there is a lot of, I mean, when you think about it, we had seen a huge increase in traffic so far, but it's not like energy consumption went up in the same way at all. So it's already where, when you look at it historically, I mean, I don't have the real estimate, but clearly we got much more efficient. So it's not like we start from a bad point, but there's a lot of new ways to be more efficient. And we know all vendors are looking at it in one way or another. What do you think is the most promising path to go further in increasing efficiency? Whichever way. Okay, we don't know how to measure it, but how is the technology helping us in that respect?
I believe energy management and energy efficiency in general is a very data intensive topic. It's a very decision and data intensive topic. So you have so much data, and you basically just need to spend what you need. And the mentioned shutdown and sleep modes, the the spatially the spatial dimension, the spectral dimension, it's in all try to find out what is the exact amount of energy and exact amount of resources what you need to spend without impacting the quality of service. And using and I know it's 2025 and everyone talks about artificial intelligence and machine learning, but I think based on the nature of it's being very data intensive, and we have a lot of data and we need to make a lot of decisions, a lot of efficient decisions, artificial intelligence and machine learning already helping a lot. And both network operators and vendors spend an enormous amount of resource to use this kind of uh, latest solution here and improve energy efficiency. So I'm very optimistic about the use of artificial intelligence because it helps you allocate the right amount of resources. And we can talk
Yeah.
about even network design, starting from network design and network planning until the whole value chain of serving the customers, operational maintenance, decommissioning your network. So I think it's all happening. So I think if I have to say one word or one topic, I would probably say the harvest your data, because in
Yes.
many cases we don't know the temperature, we don't know the angle of the antenna, we don't know how much actually we're spending on energy. uh, Try to use less and less diesel if you can. It sounds obvious, but the
Yeah.
cost of solar panels obviously decreased enough to make it an alternative for, instead of diesel, for hard to reach sites. But I think the combination of these things. Um, but yes, I agree. Like the whole industry is transferring more and more data and mm, increasing energy efficiency at the same time, as you pointed out.
Yeah, actually, one thing that, I guess maybe you can say I'm wrong, but it seems like it's kind of somewhat easier to measure is the percentage of energy consumption that comes from renewable sources. That is actually increasing quite a lot. Not the same way in every country, but as you say, as the cost of say solar panels goes down, then it makes more likely that you can use it at a cell site, and so you don't need to use as much diesel as we used to. I
E-
mean, that's
Exactly.
very much another low hanging fruit that you know.
And exactly, and in general, network operators are at the forefront of using renewables, uh,
Yeah,
compared in many cases to other industries. So many European groups are using 100% renewables. Um, Obviously, many cases not directly um, generated by them, but they purchase renewable electricity, which is obviously
yeah.
increasing demand for renewable electricity and increasing the energy management in an energy whole ecosystem to produce more and more renewables. So I think buying renewably certified electricity is also um, pushing the industry to this direction. And many network operators started to generate uh, energy from solar or wind by themselves as well.
Yeah, because well, I mean that's one of the things in telecoms that we also cell sites are also real estate property. So maybe it's not the operator is the cell site owner if that's different, but you can imagine that you have the rural base station in the middle of nowhere, and so providing power there is difficult. But if you can have solar panels around there, and you're good enough, especially depending on the weather. So there is a
It's
lot
usually
of
actually a
which
very
is
low
in
number
other
right
in
now.
other verticals is not as easy.
Yeah, in general, on-site renewable production from solar is until now is not really able to cover the whole energy need for the network operate for the site. So obviously, if you're putting a few
Yeah.
panels in hard to reach sites, it's not a self-sustaining site yet. It's usually, I think, between 10 and
Yeah.
20% of the energy can be covered by one
Only
solar panel.
20%. Yeah. Okay.
It depends on the setup,
Yeah.
but if until now, but newer technologies, newer battery solutions, newer software, which basically know exactly when the sunset is and fill up the battery. Um,
Yeah.
by then, can also help to optimize this further. Also changing the old lead acid batteries into lithium batteries, helping a lot for this
Mhm.
hard to reach scenario. And this can be actually a good combo with diesel in many cases at the first place,
Yeah.
and then we hope that we reach this kind of self-sustaining in the future. Um, but in the meantime, I think it's a good mm, combination together.
Yeah. And again, and I think that as you say, it might not happen overnight, but that we're on a good track to get that kind of stuff. Hey, Emmanuel, our time is up, but I think that I mean you give a very a great overview of really what's going on, and what is so exciting, and yet what is not so trivial. And this is why, you need to spend a lot of time. So the GSMA has been doing a lot of very excellent work in this direction, trying to really capture something that is really important and yet not that easy to quantify. It's not like measuring ARPU, or, I guess we kind of know how to do that, but measuring efficiency is way more complicated than that. So thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking to you, as it always is.
Monica, thank you so much for the discussion. I also really enjoyed it, and thank you so much for inviting, and thanks all for listening.
And thank you all for following us, and keep listening through the platform. Tell others about it, and the next podcast. Thanks.